Hello, everyone. My name is Preston Dennett, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about UFOs and our current pandemic. According to the Center for Disease Control here in the United States, respiratory disease is the third leading cause of death, and influenza, the flu, and pneumonia are number 8. According to the World Health Organization, respiratory infections are the fourth leading cause of death. So this is clearly a serious situation. Uh, and as a UFO researcher, I can tell you pretty confidently, not only are UFOs real, they are healing people. I think healing humanity is one of their primary agendas. And I say that because I've documented more than 300 cases of people who have been healed of all kinds of illnesses and diseases. In fact, I've documented cases of healing that completely cover the top 10 leading causes of death as outlined by the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control. So what is going on here? Surely the ETs must be aware of this pandemic. I don't have any current cases of people who have been cured of the coronavirus, but I can tell you I do have many cases documented where people have been cured of the flu, colds, and lung infections. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. I'd just like to cover 10 interesting cases in which people have been cured of respiratory infections. A very interesting case involves a young gentleman by the name of Chuck Doyle from Florence, Kentucky, who was suffering from a severe head cold. This is 1975. The case comes from Leonard Stringfield. Chuck went outside to check on his horses and saw a manta ray-shaped UFO hovering over his neighbor's backyard. It had colored lights all over it, about 20 feet long, and as he watched, it sent down this green beam of light, which came towards him. Chuck turned to run, but the beam of light struck him, paralyzing him temporarily. As the beam was on him, all sorts of weird mathematical equations, colors, weird landscapes filled his mind. The beam retracted, Chuck fell down, then ran back inside. The UFO disappeared in a flash, and that's when Chuck noticed that his severe head cold had completely vanished. He was examined by a doctor about a week later who pronounced him perfectly healthy. A lot of cases like this. A case from Willamette Valley, Oregon in 1982 involved a young 13-year-old boy who had contracted strep throat, streptococcus, from a local swimming pool. He was rushed to the hospital. The hospital was already overflowing with other strep patients. The witness's fever rose to 104 degrees, and despite antibiotic treatment, it spread to his kidneys, and doctors thought he would die. One evening, according to the witness, he says someone he first thought was a nurse walked into his room. It wasn't a nurse, it was a strange figure wearing a robe, had a very round body, a very white-skinned face with dark almond eyes, very thin nose and mouth, and the figure pulled out an aluminum rod, pressed it up against the witness's hip. He said it felt like an ice cube. There was no pain. And the being told the witness that we know of your condition and we will fix it. Next morning, the witness woke up and the infection began to clear up quickly, and he was healed. Another case comes from Davis, California. On September 3rd, 1995, a woman had contracted the flu. She had a small child, so she called her mother and asked her mother to pick up her child. The mother picked up the child, and the witness then proceeded to lay down on the couch and just rest. Suddenly she opened her eyes, and there was a tall, slender, gray-type figure standing in front of her. Again, the large, dark almond eyes, grayish skin. Suddenly the witness realized she wasn't in her living room anymore. She was in a small, rounded room with white light. The being explained, "Do not be afraid. You will not be harmed." The witness woke up the next morning and her flu was completely gone. A very interesting case comes from Jim Sparks, a well-known abductee who's written a book about his experiences. He's a housing developer from North Carolina. In 1995, he contracted the flu and was very sick with coughing, fever, chills. Two gray ETs came through the wall, showed up, and reminded Jim that if he ever got sick, they had promised to heal him. They probed him with various instruments for a few minutes. Jim blacked out, and when he woke up the next morning, he was healed. Lots of other cases. One occurred in 1998 to an anonymous witness who was suffering from a severe respiratory infection and had a powerful dream of being taken up into a UFO by gray aliens. And when she woke up the next morning, her cold began to heal. Another case comes from the 1990s. An elderly woman, a grandmother from Arkansas, contracted the flu. Her whole family was pretty frightened because it was a severe case. The grandmother was very religious, and one morning she woke up and was completely healed and announced to the family that she'd been healed by extraterrestrials. The family was really surprised to hear that term aliens and asked her what happened. And the grandmother explained that she woke up, found herself laying on a table. Her pastor was there, and there were several figures that reminded her of the elders in the Bible. And when the family asked her to describe what the figures looked like, she said that they looked like what we would describe as aliens today. Another case I investigated came from a gentleman by the name of Don, who lives in Utah. He has been experiencing contacts his entire life. In 2013, he developed a severe chest infection which just wouldn't go away. One evening, he was in his bathroom when E.T. showed up. He says it was a sort of hybrid-looking figure, grayish skin, large piercing eyes, perfectly chiseled facial features. He was wearing a silver jumpsuit with an emblem on the chest. The being was also holding a vial of liquid, sort of a neon pink liquid, and instructed Don to drink it, which he did. He said it was a thick consistency, tasteless. The being took the vial and disappeared, and the infection very quickly cleared up after that and never returned. David Jacobs has uncovered a case of a person who was cured of pneumonia, as well as John Mack, both MD. The case from John Mack occurred in 1942 to a man by the name of Edward Carlos from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At age 5, Edward had contracted pneumonia, had a very high fever, and was in a near coma when he had apparently an out-of-body experience, and found himself surrounded by gray-type ETs who began to shine light into his body, filling it with light, returned him to his physical body, and at that point his fever broke and he immediately began to heal. A case from 1970 in Brooksville, Florida involves a witness who suffered from asthma his entire life. He was in his trailer when he heard a loud buzzing noise, went outside and discovered that a classic flying saucer had landed right next to his trailer. He was escorted inside by 3 humanoid figures, 4 humanoid figures actually, and was shown the interior of the craft, which was not a whole lot to it, just some colored lights and panels and things like this. He doesn't really remember everything that happened, but was returned back to his trailer. The craft took off, and following that, his asthma completely disappeared. There's another case, which comes from Italian researcher Alfredo Lissoni, which occurred on December 27th, 1986, to an anonymous local celebrity who was suffering from lung disease. The celebrity said that a UFO appeared outside his window, and several humanoid figures appeared, and following this incident, he was cured of lung disease. Another case comes from a contactee named Joni. This was around the 1990s. She was suffering from severe pneumonia And for 6 weeks, she lay there in the hospital. None of the antibiotics would work. Suddenly, she was pulled up through the roof of the hospital, she says, and cured by ETs. She blacked out. And when she returned, her fever had broken and her pneumonia was completely gone. So yeah, there are other cases like these. I've documented many cases. I suspect there are a lot more, and I suspect there are some cures being enacted right now. I think, pandemics have occurred regularly throughout human history. We've always gotten through them. We're going to get through this one. I think it's a time we need to change. It's a sign things are out of balance. And it's a time for love, healing, coming together, compassion, truth, knowledge. So yeah, we'll get through it. Let's do it. Thank you.